They say that life is hard, that there's not enough to go around, and that it's not spiritual to want money. And repeatedly, they say to themselves, I'm not good enough. I say that life is filled with possibilities. Abundance is literally all around us. And you being here is more than enough. My name is Arabelle, and my assignment in this life is to question the belief systems, to learn the secrets that are hidden out in the open, and to show others what's possible. Each episode, I bring you a guest or a message that will make you question your choices, challenge your views, dig deep into your beliefs, and wake you up to your truth. Join us as we walk through this thing called life. You ready? Let's do this. Welcome, Pia and Tariq. So happy that you guys are on this Awakened Leaders interview series. Now, I know that we're going to be talking about so many interesting things, but before we even get into that, I want to actually ask you this question. If I were to ask the people around you to describe you guys in 3 words, what would they be?
I guess for me, at least intuitive. You can take next.
Unconventional.
Clear.
That's what I would have picked for you as well.
Yeah.
Ooh, creative, childlike.
Yeah, playful.
All right. So let's get into your story, because I know that you guys are doing amazing things. And I know you guys hold retreats and a lot of workshops as well. But really, if you could just take us through the journey, the part of the journey that you want to share with our audience, your story, where you are from, who you are, what you do in this world, that would be amazing.
My background is having gone through the traditional gamut of education, higher education, got my degree, got my master's, and then was out in the working world and was very dissatisfied with the experience that I had. I felt like there was this sense of being undervalued, not just for myself, but for my peers and colleagues as well. And, you know, up until that point, I had done everything the way everybody said I should. So I got my good grades. I went to college, went to university, etc. And then I think this led to a lot of inner anger towards the way that the system was kind of set up. And also growing up in the Middle East, in Jordan, there was a lot of suppression going on. There's a lot of dogma. It's all under the guise of tradition, but it really is more of a suppression. And then I think from that led me on this journey of wanting to take a leap of faith and explore life on my own terms. So I began to learn about manifestation. I remember my mother first introduced me to The Secret back when I had my, corporate job many, many years ago. And that just kind of snowballed into this deep path of both self-discovery and also a keen interest in neuroscience, in experiential psychology, finding out how childhood programs are found and how to rewrite that old conditioning and that old program. That then led to a whole bunch of different things, from building a parkour gym in Bali called the Superhero Factory, which taught people how to overcome their mental blocks through physical obstacles, to speaking on stage. And I did a TEDx talk back in 2011, and that kind of set me on this public speaking route and workshops. And that's probably a little bit of how I got into things.
I grew up in Norway, traditional Norwegian education system and all these things. And when I was 16, I started to practice yoga, and I started also to have bigger questions about the universe. Why are we here? What are we doing here? And I didn't get any of that, those answers that I was looking for. I didn't get that through the normal Norwegian school system. So I one day I went to the school library, and it was a normal Norwegian school library, not spiritual at all. But I put my fingers over the books, and then I said stop, and then I pulled out I did this 2 times, and I pulled out 2 books, And both of those books took me on journeys to different corners of the world. And those books really changed my life. So one of the books was the Tibetan Book of the Living and Dying. And that book, you know, it really, it talks a lot about having a teacher. It's the Buddhist tradition. So my heart started to long to have a spiritual teacher. And, you know, at this time I was 17, I was sitting in school learning algebra, and I have learned that 3 times before. And I knew that I would never ever in my life need algebra. You know, I would forget it again. And I was feeling I've wasted my time. So I was feeling like, okay, why am I here? I'm not doing what I want to do. And then I quit school, and that was not a popular, from my surrounding, that was not popular. And I was told, you know, you're going to be a failure. You're going to be you know, and you're a dropout out of school. You're going to be, you know, struggling the rest of your life. All these things were projected on me. And then I went to Bali, and I didn't know anything about Bali. I just knew that I want to go to Bali. And after a week in Bali, I found a spiritual teacher that I studied with up in the rice fields in Bali for years. So I went between Bali and India and studied the Vedic teachings. And that became the foundation of what I teach today. So I host, you know, we host retreats. And also, so I'm a yoga teacher, yoga and meditation teacher, and that's based on the Vedic teachings, which is the teachings that are the source to all the Eastern philosophies. So they're the source of Buddhism and Hinduism. So I found what I looked for there, and I still love studying that. And then the other book took me to another corner of the world, which was into the Amazon, and I read about plant medicines. So I went there in search of plant medicines, and I found plant medicines in the Amazon and in Brazil. So I went for years, I went back and forth through Bali to Brazil to India to study with all these different spiritual teachers. And also plant medicines now been a part of my life for the past 14 years. So through the plant medicines, you know, for years you learn to kind of work on yourself, and then it becomes a time to work with other people, be in service. And then I was asked at a certain point to start to do retreats. So we've been doing retreats for the past 14 years. So that's what we now do also together. We've been doing that together for the past 2 years. We host detox and vitality and yoga retreats all over the globe.
You guys are like the power couple that a lot of people would inspire to be and have, and I can really see that. And your story is very similar to my story, actually the combined story. So Tariq, like I'm originally from Burma, so I went through the traditional, you know, system as well. And especially for women or for girls back in those days, you know, we have a path laid out for us already. You know, you go to school, and then you go to uni, and then you meet a man who can provide for you, and you get married, and then you have kids, and then basically you live out your life, and then you die, you know. And for me, I knew that I was not meant for that. So I started looking out for different avenues where that could teach me something different that I didn't know. And then that led me down to that spiritual path as well. And then working with plant medicines. And that's also plays a big role in my life. And that has shifted me so much. So I can totally relate to you guys and what you guys are doing here. But the question that came up in my head as you were telling your stories was, now that you've worked with lots of people over the last 10, 14 years, I know that, again, you know, it's a very layered answer, but if you were to put it to just a couple of things, what do you think is the fundamental thing that hold people back in their lives?
From my side, I would say it's definitely fear of other people's opinions, a lot of societal, familial, and social programming. So there's a lot of expectations that other people have projected on onto people, that people wear almost like that itchy sweater that doesn't quite fit you right, but people wear it anyway. And I feel like people take on other people's fears and other people's projected failures, other people's longing, other people's bad experiences, and try and wear them themselves. And it never fits, but people try and make it fit for years of their lives. And I think that there's true power in being able to awaken into who you really are, free from all of the layers that other people try and make you wear. I would say that's the main thing that holds people back. It's all, psycho-emotional restraints. Nothing physical. It's all an internal incarceration that people create for themselves.
I think it also stems from, how we view our world, especially in the West. We kind of view our world as something that just happened. It's just a planet floating around in space, just an accident. And there's no deeper meaning behind anything. And I think that's also one of the reasons why a lot of people are struggling, because they don't, we're not taught that we are divine beings. We're not taught that we are, we're like so special, and there's so much light in us. We're taught quite the opposite. So actually, one of my amazing teachers, he explained it as we develop and evolve, it's more about peeling off the layers of what we've been taught. It's not so much learning new stuff. It's more peeling off all the wrong notions, and under there you are, which is, we're not taught this wisdom in our society. We don't value wisdom in our society. We value youth and being youthful and beautiful and successful, but we don't value wisdom and inner knowledge like they do, for example, more in India.
Yeah, why do you think that is, that we are not valuing wisdom and the knowledge, but focused a lot more on the external things, the material possessions or the material side of things? Why do you think we have become that way?
It is I think a lot of it is for sure programming. You will be, to some extent, a product of what you're exposed to. So if we were taught from through the school system, through everything, a very different story, it's all in the stories that we're told, we would view ourselves and our world differently. But for sure, it's programming from early stage.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, it's almost designed to be that way. So for example, the analogy that I like to use is, thousands of years ago, you'd have the tribe gather around a fire, and people would listen to the elders share knowledge, and there would be one person speaking, and that person would be sharing their knowledge and passing on wisdom, usually through stories. And if you fast forward to the modern day, we swapped out the fire with a television set, and everybody instinctively gathers around the source of light in the room, because that's what we've done for eons. So in this case, it just happens to be a television. But rather than passing on useful knowledge and valuable wisdom in the way of stories, it's trivialized and made into superficial entertainment that doesn't really educate or warm or nourish people. And I think when that then, if you extrapolate that out across society, I would just say we have a misplaced sense of priority. We think that, this material object will fill my emotional or spiritual void, but they operate on different planes. And I think people, what I see is people are trying to fill inner holes with material objects, and one just cannot fill the other. That, I would say, is probably what's going on. And it's through, as Pia was saying, the conditioning and the teaching that we've received has been buy this thing and it will make you happy. Wear these clothes and they will make you happy. It's all these extrinsic motivators rather than the intrinsic things of peer respect, camaraderie, love, support, belonging, shelter, nourishment. All of these things make us feel full, not these external things. So I feel like people are just chasing the wrong thing.
In the Vedic teachings, they have a saying. It's called the the wheel of suffering, samsara, which is, they also call it the becoming disease. You know, it's always there and then I will be happy, there and then life will be so much better. And that is only when we step out of that wheel of being all projecting into the future and be more in the now, that you find that true happiness. I think personally, human beings, what we see in our retreats, what I've been seeing for so many years now, people love to grow. You know, like our nature is nature, and nature grows, and that's what I see. Like, people love to evolve and grow. That's also part of our nature. So when we're exposed to the right things, people really soak it in. And yeah.
Oh my God, I absolutely love this. And what came up in my head was, you know, what Dr. Bruce Lipton says, you know, like our environment shapes us. Even all these, what we call genetic diseases, they are actually created by our environment. We only have a couple of genes that can actually turn into a disease, but the rest is influenced by an environment. And you're right, it's so important what we are exposing ourselves to. And what you said, Tariq, about the TV, I've never heard of that. That is so amazing that, you know, instead of the fire, now we are crowding, like going to the TV where the light.
Instinctively.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So I have so many questions coming up in my head, but focusing on the time, I'm going to just pick one question. What do you think that humanity needs right now?
I would say everybody who wants to speed up their process of awakening, when you feel called, plant medicines are just a huge gateway to that. I mean, I remember
done in the right ways.
Done in the right way. That, yeah. But like I can literally say what my life was like before and after. You know, before plant medicines, I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I was eating a lot of meat. I grew up in the Middle East where you ate meat 3 times a day. Nobody even questioned it. It was just what people did. And then I remember I had my very first plant medicine experience, and literally the day after, I decided I was going to stop drinking alcohol for a year to try it out, and I was going to give up red meat. And that just became a path that led to me now being plant-based, and alcohol is no longer a part of my life. So I think people need to put themselves in a place where growth happens, put themselves in an environment where accelerated growth happens. Plant medicines are probably one way of achieving that for those who feel ready to step into that. Also, I would say that the idea of reality that we're presented with, it's just a story. It's a series of stories. And if you wait for the movie or for the commercial or for the TV show to tell you what reality is, and to show you how to respond to emotional situations, to show you what things you should buy, how you should behave, because that's what it is. Like, we learn through like behavioral observation. That's how we learn from our parents. We watch them and we mimic them. So when you're watching people behave in a certain way, over time, you just accept that, oh, that's just what the world looks like. Like, we watch, for example, I don't know, by the time a child is, I think 9 years old, they've been exposed to several thousand deaths already, you know, and they see so much violence. Yeah, they see so much violence on screen. Yet if you walk around, like, the majority of people have no experience of violence. The only experience of violence that they've had is through watching it on the news or watching it on TV. So it creates this kind of false reality. So when Pia is saying a reality check, like, check, is that actually your reality? Or is your reality really beautiful? Like being here in Norway, you know, being out in nature, and it's very different than the picture that's portrayed.
I kind of like to see, you know, human beings are very much like hobbits. They just like family, time together, a good party, nature, things that grow. Human beings are very simple. They're not, I met only one person in my life that wants war. You know, you don't meet that many people that are that diabolic. But that can be my reality also, because I attract a lot of amazing high vibe people.
That's also what I wanted to ask you, you know, now that you've worked with so many people and coming from different backgrounds, different belief systems, also unlearning, and now also evolving into, you know, becoming different human beings that you guys are today. Do you think that who you are being actually attracts who come into your work, and and who you attract into your business, into your life as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, you don't get what you want, you get who you are. So you attract who you are being rather than just simply what you feel like you're craving.
I actually have a teacher. He explained that one episode that happened to him many years ago in a part of London that was very, very criminal. And he went there very late and wanted to buy something from a kiosk, from a shop. And it was steal in front of the shop because it was a very criminal neighborhood. And his friend was waiting in the car, and then he went out of the car to get his stuff, and then these two people out of nowhere jumped on the car, and his friend panicked and he hit the pedal and just drove out of there. And my teacher was just standing there, just like, okay, what do I do now? There's these two really angry, they were high on something and they wanted to rob them. And he said he was standing there and they were passing in front of him and they couldn't see him. He was standing there like in the middle of the street, but they could not see him because they were operating on a very low frequency. And he was not afraid, nothing. And they simply couldn't see him. I found that very, very fascinating. You know, you really don't attract, if you are a high vibe, if you keep your vibe high, you don't attract bad stuff in that way.
I think we can have these
By the way,
conversations.
take your time. So like we're we've blocked out some time here to really be able to give you whatever you came to receive in this interview.
Okay, you should go get lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because we're going to be here that long. But yeah, coming back to that concept, right? Because I believe in that as well. I'm a big believer. And, I didn't believe in that before. Growing up, we were taught that, like, I'll believe it when I see it, but it's actually the other way around.
You'll
I'll
see it when you believe it.
I believe it. So that means I had to really unlearn a lot of programs and really understand that I have to be who I want to see and attract in my life, in my relationship, in my friendships, in my business, because it plays out in all these areas, right? But what came up to me is the question of these analytical minds, who are, I know that there will be some who are very logical and very analytical who are watching and listening this interview, and they'll be saying, yeah, okay, I get that, like I've heard of that. But many years ago, back in 2007, and by the way, this is not about politics, it's just an example. Like in Burma, there was this riot happen, and all these monks from all different parts of Burma, they came out onto the roads and they started chanting just so that they can create peace in the country, because there was some kind of, it's not really a civil war, but it could break out. So they actually decided to go onto the roads and started chanting prayers. But what the military government did was they started shooting all the monks, and Burma is a Buddhist country. So
wow.
So that was really bad. That was all over the news. That situation made people lost faith in that, So they're like, but, monks are out there doing good things. They're chanting prayers very peacefully. They're not even protesting or doing anything, but they got shot. A lot of monks died. So where is that thing, that you have to be who you are and you attract who you are, and why did they get even shot? So there are so many similar situations in our lives as well. Little things from, manifesting money and nothing's showing up, or to manifesting or calling in the one, the relationship, and either, douchebags show up or nobody shows up. So all these things happen in our life, and a lot of people who are wanting to do this process but not seeing the evidence. What would you say to that?
The way that I experience that particular thing is that, and I see this in myself, I see this in people around me, that you can have understood something inside of you, but it still takes time to it fully to manifest around you. That's a little bit of it takes time sometimes for it to fully be part and for you to fully embody it. So one thing is to understand, okay, I get what I attract, but another thing is to embody it and to really, really believe in it. And in my life also, let's say prosperity and abundance, I believed in it for years, but it still didn't show up in my life until I fully embodied it. So one thing is to make something into a concept in your mind, but there's a whole nother thing to really truly live it and breathe it and feel it. That's like a whole nother topic.
To use another analogy as well, most people are caught up in negative momentum. So the analogy that I have for that is, imagine you have a cup of tea and you're stirring it with a spoon. If you take the spoon out of the cup, it takes a while before that water settles back to neutral. So just because you've removed the source of, let's say the spoon is the negative source, right? And you're spinning the water. You remove the negativity, well, the water is still in a vortex because of that old momentum, and it needs time to dissipate. And so that buffer of time is, I think, what's often overlooked, because people are like, well, I'm having all of these positive thoughts. Why is positive stuff not showing up? Completely overlooking the fact that they might have been in a negative spiral for years. And that would need time to neutral out and become just a placid, calm lake before it can start spinning the other way and start going into a positive spiral. Like Pia said, that buffer of time, the way that I look at our imaginations is that's our 5D, 3D, our 5D animation software, right? I studied animation at university. So that's like the software that you use to visualize and create your internal world. But then when you press render, the time that it takes to render that out into your life, that is the buffer of time that's needed. And that's the thing that people overlook. And it doesn't take a lot of time, but it does take a lot of energy. But for most people, to shift a lot of energy usually takes a lot of time. And so there's that delay.
Not to speak of how many hundreds of thousands of years of wiring that you're going against. That's what I love with Tony Robbins. He mentions that we're wired to think negatively. You're wired in that way. I got a lot of help from the plant medicines with rewiring my way of viewing the world. Yeah. To remember and be patient. And
again, if you look at like, prehistoric men, our attention to dangers and hazards is what kept us alive. Because if you were able to, that's why fear is so strong, because if you see someone in your tribe get mauled by a tiger, that moment is going to be etched in your psyche. It's going to be encoded inside you, so that it doesn't happen to you, so that you and your family don't fall victim to the same situations.
And then pass through the genes.
Yeah, and it's passed generationally on. That's why you have these days, people have, like snakes on average kill like 40 people a year in the States, yet you have thousands of people, maybe millions of people with a fear of snakes, yet almost everybody's never been bitten by a snake, probably hasn't even seen a snake, yet cars kill 40,000 people a year. Nobody has a fear of cars because it hasn't had a chance to genetically encode. So I always like to look at where society stemmed from. But these days, what you have is the sensationalized news media, where people are watching the news and naturally you want to tune in because you are entrained inside your body to look out for hazards and dangers. So that's why news is so compelling. But it creates a false reality that the world is this dark, dangerous place everywhere you go. And it's not. It's really beautiful. And most people want good, not only for themselves, but for others. Most people, once their cup is full and starts to overflow, will naturally spill out into the lives of others, will naturally be supportive, will naturally be of service. But when you have people impoverished giving from an empty cup, then you become much more guarded. You become much more me, rather than we. You have to get everybody to fill up their own cup so that they're overflowing, because a rising tide lifts all boats, but that tide is not going to start rising until your cup is full. Just, don't blame yourself for being angry or for being fearful. You're in a society where a lot of people are vibrating on that frequency of anger or fear. So you're going to be caught up in that metaphysical soup with everybody else. And it's going to be a lot harder to go against the grain and to swim upstream.
Also, according to the yogic teachings, we have many bodies. We have energetic bodies, and this body is the most physical one. The bone structure is the most dense one, and it takes time for something to come into this physical reality. It takes some time. So even if you have an idea out here in one of your energetic bodies, it takes some time for it to fully come down and integrate into your day-to-day life. And I remember some years ago, I had to really work on myself and say, Pia, it's actually possible to be happy like most of the time, and you are allowed to. And I really I had to like tell myself again and again, because I didn't think that that was a possibility. Because you hear about so much, you know, you think life is going to be a struggle, life is not a dance on roses. We grow up with all these belief systems, and then you really have to rewire and break out of that.
I absolutely love this. I should have like written down everything. I think I'm actually going to do, you know, those time stamps for this interview specifically, so that people can go and search for, because there are so much truth bombs that you guys have just dropped. But seriously, but to recap a little bit from my point of view with what my understanding is, what I remembered was Dr. Joe Dispenza says this in a different way, but it's the same thing, which is we are so wired to think negatively because it's survival, you know, and our parents have done it, our grandparents have done it, generations and generations have done it. So it's just how we do things. And it's really about questioning our choices, questioning our behaviors, because most of the time we don't even question so many things, because we don't even remember to question, because that's how we live, that's how we do things, because whoever we look at, wherever we look at, that's what everybody else is doing. So that's what this whole interview series is about, for us to really question our choices, including myself, you know. And what Dr. Joe Dispenza says is, because we're so hardwired to think in a negative way, because we're always looking out for danger so that we can survive, fight, or flight, we are not used to thinking thoughts that will really help us. And we've also trained our body to produce different like chemicals that our body has accustomed to. So even if we're shifting it here consciously and we're really doing the work, our body is not used to it, because at certain points in time, the body is like, hey, where are my chemicals? You know, I've modified myself.
It's an addiction.
It's an addiction, exactly.
Waiting
like,
for
I'm
its
not
fix.
used to. Yeah, exactly. So the body starts asking for those chemicals. And so again, I believe that it's what you said, Pia. I think it's integrating and really embodying, and also, I guess, being really consistent and doing this on a repetition until it becomes the new normal for us. Yeah. So I would love to know what you guys do at your retreats. I can already feel the energy from here just by listening to what you guys are saying. Like, what happens in your retreats? What do you do there? Like, what kind of like magic potions are you brewing there? I would love to know.
I suppose on paper, it's like, come do yoga and, you know, drink really high vibe cold pressed juices and have beautiful gourmet plant food and do animal movement and do guided meditations. Though when people actually show up, it becomes a detox, not just through green juice, but it becomes an emotional detox. It becomes, this really unlayering and unteaching and unlearning of all of this stuff that kind of happens just, I suppose, by being around us, because that's the kind of people that we are and that's the path that we're walking. It naturally spills out when people are around us. And I think that our retreats work a little bit like a massage. You know, a massage doesn't achieve relaxation because of a single stroke, but by the continuous use of directed pressure, by the continuous intentional touch that over the course of the massage creates the experience. And I think that's how our retreats work, is it's greater than the sum of its parts. It just becomes a formula, and we've dialed it in now that we can kind of put people in on one end and have them emerge on the other end feeling genuinely shifted from within.
So it's a beautiful mix of everything that we found on our path of, you know, awakening. And so it's Vedic teachings, it's yoga, it's body work, it's animal movements, it's manifestation teachings with Tariq. I do nutrition and detox coaching and classes. It's actually a little bit like a mini education in how to keep your vibe high, how to have a good morning routine, how to, you know, we expose people to the latest science. Really good documentaries that we've found are mind-blowing, and we take them around also to the most beautiful places we find, like holy sites, water temples.
Everything is in support of growth. Everything is in support of transformation. And that's the intention from the outset, to create a very comfortable space to potentially get uncomfortable if needs be. So people feel very they feel like they're in a safe container to really reflect and go inward. And
we're not a retreat for shallow people. We are deep divers, and we encourage everyone that comes to our retreat to go deep diving within themselves, because that's where the big treasures are. When you really deep dive, that's where you really find the diamonds. It's only in the core of the earth, you know, that diamonds are found. So
more scuba, less snorkeling.
I love that. Yeah, I'm a big believer as well that, you know, when we actually do the work on ourselves and when we start to embody certain things and when we create those shifts and when we ourselves go into those places really deep, then we start to create that energy vortex, and just being in your energy already creates that shift. And that is already like the first step, you know, that's a really already powerful. So I would love to know what kind of like, whether it's daily practices or weekly or whatever it is that you both do together or separately, for you to be able to continuously shift, continuously up level, evolve, or when your patterns come up, how do you deal with that? I would love to know.
There's a number of things. I mean, for me, so meditation in a traditional sense is in just being able to sit quietly with my own thoughts and in silence and just kind of not try to have no thoughts, but simply observe the thoughts that come through, like watching passing clouds, you know, with no judgment or attachment. But also for me personally, I find meditation through movement. For me, it's all about moving my body and allowing whatever energy is pent up or stuck there to be able to move through it. So I know that some people find theirs through yoga, some people, for example, weightlifting. For me, it's movement. So I like to move through the environment. You know, as I said, my background is parkour, which is all about overcoming obstacles. So I find ways of flowing through my environment, using my mind to overcome my body. That for me is incredibly therapeutic. That's one of my personal practices. Other than that is really being intentional about screen time. I have all of my notifications, everything turned off everywhere. So I will check my phone or my laptop or whatever when I want to check it, not when it wants me to, you know, not when it wants to be checked. I feel, you know, gives me a lot of agency over my time rather than constantly being subjected to a nagging blue light. I would say other than that.
Well, you've been cold exposure and.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, freezing cold showers and running in the snow.
Yeah, he's been running up here in Norway in only swimming shorts for weeks, like through the winter. And all the Norwegians thinks he's crazy, but it's really working.
Yeah, a big cup of cold rather than a big cup of coffee. Like, yeah, that.
I used to do that as well when I moved here. I'm in Melbourne. I used to live in Perth, which is Western Australia, and then I moved here. And Melbourne obviously is colder, not as cold as Norway, but it's colder than Perth. And I'm not used to that cold, and especially coming from Burma originally. So I moved here and I got a house with a pool, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to live it up, but it's cold all the time. And then we can't heat up the pool. So the first year I moved here, throughout the whole winter, even if it's like 2 degrees, I swam through the whole winter, and it was the best. Everyone thought that I was crazy, and I thought I was crazy every time I jump into the pool because it's the most painful thing. But once you come out of it, oh my goodness, that was orgasmic, you know, to actually do that. I would love to talk a little bit about business that you're part of, because it's not so much about the business but about the story where Tariq, like I saw your post that you shared about where you were before in terms of financially, and now you're rewriting your financial destiny in this with this business, and you've changed it. And so I know that a lot of people are interested in, you know, manifestation of abundance, but I would love to hear your story and what you have done also, Pia, like to shift that.
For me, what really began to shift, okay, so there's a couple of different things. What we've been speaking about so far here today is working on ourselves, right, as the driver, right? So like we are the pilot, we are the driver. So everybody's all about like, let me work on myself, let me clear my old blocks, clear my old programs, let me do all of this stuff. We work so much on ourselves as the driver that we rarely stop to ask, are we even in the right vehicle? And so for me, it's like society says, you know, here's the highway to success. You just have to travel down this highway as fast as you can and get to the destination. But they sit you on top of a donkey with a compass, right? Rather than being in like a sports car with the latest GPS. And so, of course, you're only going to be able to go as fast as your vehicle can carry you. You know, just like if you have someone like Michael Schumacher, but you put him on a bicycle, he's only going to be able to go as fast as the bicycle can go. He's no longer the Michael Schumacher that the world knows him for. And so for me, it was this realization that, wow, I've just been given a bunch of really bad vehicles to create wealth and prosperity. And now I feel like we're on a bullet train.
Attracted to you also.
Yeah.
It's another way of saying it.
Yeah, attracted. Maybe I wasn't ready for the right vehicle because I probably would have squandered it and made a lot of poor decisions in the past. And so right now I feel like we found a bullet train. Like the difference in terms of what we've experienced in growth, financially, in wealth and prosperity, has been the change from a bicycle to a bullet train. It really has been that dramatic of a shift. That's one aspect to it. The other aspect is, I would say, what's made this so successful for us is every time we're talking to anybody, or we're always looking from the lens of how can we support and serve that person. It's like the biggest shift has been to move out of self and move into service, and really to not be like, okay, even my financial story isn't where I would like it to be. Never mind that. How can I really allow this person, how can I enable this person, support this person, assist this person to really live their maximum, to really live their full potential, to really step into their gifts rather than being stuck in the grind. And that shift towards service has catapulted what we've been able to do, because I find that there's a direct correlation between how much value you create for others and how much prosperity shows up in your own life. So we've just been creating tons more value for the people around us to be able to free themselves from whatever, internal shackles they've got going on.
Everything that we're talking about, even including for myself, first level is, okay, I get it. And then it needs to click in. And then it clicks in on a deeper layer. And then it clicks in and it clicks in. So there are so many layers that these concepts or ideas or practices can kick in. And so we have people from practicing these at different layers and levels. And so now those who are listening to this, they're like, okay, I've heard of that before. It's not about me. It's about serving. Okay, it's about helping people. It's about making an impact. It's about giving a lot of content and giving a lot of values. And it's also about shifting myself, doing the inner work and become a vibrational match. I've been doing all of that, but what I really want is the strategy, the action side of things that I can do in combination with these things. If they were to ask you that, like, what would you suggest them to actually start doing now so that they can start seeing this momentum and also results?
I would start to see doubt as your biggest enemy. So whenever, I don't care what that doubt looks like, it will always transform. The doubt and the worrying will always transform in a new form.
Shapeshifters.
It's a shapeshifter. So you have to be very quick. Yeah, this is kind of like a game. You have to be like, I see you. You're not taking me this time. And then you really spot every time you're in doubt, it's a specific frequency. So you don't really fall into the story of the doubt. It can be whatever. But every time you're in doubt, you do something to move you out of that space. So it can be a high, like whatever makes your frequency or your vibe higher. It can be a spiritual practice. It can be dancing. It can be putting on your favorite song, walking, moving, whatever it takes to move that energy, because doubt is not serving anyone. Like, to be really, really clear, and also, of course, find out where are you heading. Be very clear about where you're heading. And whenever you're in lower self realm, worrying, doubting, fear, just recognize and label it as, okay, now I'm in a state of low vibe, and move yourself out of there.
I'd like to add to that consistency. Like, as much as I would love to say, like, oh, every morning I'm super zen and I wake up and I, meditate, unflinchingly. The truth is, it goes in waves. But one thing is, we're very consistent. So we're always working on things. We're always progressing. Like, there isn't a day that goes by that some progress hasn't been made in one area of our lives or another. So it's just that constant, you know, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, and eventually you'll climb the mountain. It's the same thing. You have to actually keep taking those steps. And if you're doing them every day, then you're just going to get there sooner.
And also, like, celebrate the fruits of your previous actions. Don't always look for what's next. You know, like, take your time to really enjoy what you, like, remember what you already, your wins for the day or your wins for the week. I think it's so important to celebrate. And if we don't take time to really enjoy, you know, our actions, there's always something else, and we're never ever in the present.
Yeah,
you're never
wow.
content.
Never content. It's this never-ending story of not being good enough or not happy enough. So yeah.
And also, whenever you're talking to anybody, regardless to, you know, what business you're in, one of the big shifts that I notice is if you start just even internally, just asking what's in it for them. You just keep asking what's in it for them the whole time. And then you really come from a place of service. And people feel that energy. They can feel when you're in this for you or when you're in this because you genuinely want to see their lives improve. And if you just keep asking what's in it for them, more will be in it for you than you could ever have if you were just thinking what's in it for you.
Yeah. Wow. That is so simple, yet so powerful. And a lot of us are not practicing that. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, a lot of people who are watching and listening this interview, so this year, 2019, is the year that they're going to take that leap. And whatever
Right.
that leap looks like for them, whether it's starting a new business, joining a business, getting into a relationship, out of a relationship, moving countries, some big leap, because they know that they're ready. This is it. They can't not do it. This is the year. But they are, at the moment, being held back by doubts, fears, and questioning, can I do it? Am I even good enough? You know, all those thoughts. What advice would you give to them?
For me, it's really easy to start doing it. Like those fears and those doubts come up because you don't have the physical proof yet that you can do it. But as you start to do it, the proof comes because you're like, oh, now I'm doing it. So you observe yourself doing it. The inner witness goes, oh, it's actually happening. And then those fears gradually subside. They dissipate. But it's action kills fear. You
have to take a leap and have faith and take a chance. Like you won't win if you're not willing to risk anything. You have to be willing to risk. And what's the baddest, you know, what's the worst outcome? It's not that bad. So just like try again. And you know, I love what Tariq teaches in his workshops, like how forgiving children are compared to grown-ups.
For example, do you know how many times the average adult will try something before labeling themselves as a failure?
Once.
3 is the average. Do you know how many times a child will try something before labeling themselves as a failure?
30 times?
300.
Oh, wow.
So just mathematically, children are 100 times kinder to themselves. They're 100 times more self-forgiving. And if you think about it, you're a mother, right? So as your child learns how to walk, how many times would you be willing to see your child fall over? Would you after, like, let's say, you know, 30 times be like, oh, you're not good at this whole walking thing. I think you're destined to just crawl on your belly, just slither on the ground forever. Or would you have that constant encouragement, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't give up until. And this is the thing, like as children, there's no doubt in our minds, there's no doubt in any of our parents' minds that we will walk, right? Even though we start crawling on our bellies, we will walk. And children will fall hundreds of times in order to learn how to walk. Yet, for some reason, when we become grown up, you know, we'll try playing the guitar 3 times or piano or ballet or gymnastics or whatever 3 times and be like, oh, that's it, we're not good at this. If you actually tried anything 300 times, I could almost guarantee you would become proficient at it way before you hit 100. And I think if children can be so forgiving with themselves, if we can just be more forgiving and realize that when we are starting to learn any new skill, and I can say this from experience because I've made it my life's work to be able to get competent at a variety of different skills that are very different from each other, from flamenco guitar to parkour to writing to spoken word to, you know, different things. When you are learning a new skill, be it in business or be it personally, you are an infant at that skill. You are like that child who is crawling, and it might take tens, dozens, hundreds of times to learn how to walk. And that's okay. That's just how the human repetitious animal works. And when you recognize that, you can just be like, oh, well, I've tried for the 10th time now. I still have 290 to go.
We see this with our team, that everyone has to burn through the same karmic imprint of, I'm not good enough. Can I do this? Can I do an online business? You know, who am I to do an online business? Who wants to listen to me? Everyone in our team are going through the same story. So it's almost like we have to burn through that programming collectively. And yeah, and be more like children. Learn from the children.
Yeah.
I love that you talk about that, because I actually wrote a post the other day that for me personally, having Eli, he's 8 months old now, or almost 9 months. For me, I feel like I'm the same age as him, because when he was born, it was my own rebirth, and I'm having to learn so many things that I didn't know existed before. Even things like, you know, before, to me, like flow and structure are completely opposite, two opposite things. Like when you're in flow, you can't have structure because it's rigid, you know. That was just ideas. Now being a mom, I don't have that time to be in flow and to do all of that. So I'm learning how to find that flow in the structure, because being a mom is all about routines, you know? So I'm having to learn so many things that I didn't know before. And I'm reminding myself every single day that, you know what? You're also only 8 months old. You're learning how to crawl together with Eli. You'll fall. Eli doesn't beat himself up. He laughs and then he starts doing it all over again. So why can't you if he does that? So I'm also telling myself that. So I absolutely love what you just said. Now that we are coming towards the end of the interview, thank you so much for sharing everything. Like we could go on, or I could go on for hours talking about so many things. Yeah, if people want to have a taste of your work, or really just see like what it is that you guys offer, is there anything that you can give away for our audience so that they can go and have a taste and find out a little bit more about the amazing work that you guys do?
I have a free gift that I can give to people. If you go to my website, which is tariqamawi.com, which is Tango Alpha Romeo India Quebec Alpha Mike Alpha Whiskey India.com /VR meditation. So VR as in virtual reality. I put together through, you know, many years of exploration really, and also study of people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm a big fan, a meditation that takes about 20 minutes to do, which will allow you to experience your future self today. But you know how when you're reading in a dream, you get like the answers to some like big life questions, and then you wake up and you're like, but there's no actual book. You can't pull it out of the dream world into the real world. Well, this meditation is designed to pull the information out of the meditation into the real world. So when you do this meditation, you have a notebook and a pen next to you, and then just go through the experience. And I would love to see what you make of it. So it's tariqamawi.com /VR meditation. Comes with a PDF that explains the meditation and how it works and so on. But if I were you, I wouldn't read the PDF until after you've gone through the experience.
Okay, beautiful. I will put that link in this interview page as well. Now, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you other than your website?
So they can check out our retreat website, which is helenekatravels.com, which is, again, to spell it phonetically, is Hotel Echo Lima Echo November India Kilo Alpha.
I love it.
Yeah, Helenika Travels, and travels like traveling. Helenekatravels.com. And that's where you'll find the information on our transformational retreats. And I'm not sure when this interview goes live, but we have one coming up in April from the 11th to the 21st, and we still have a couple of spaces available if anybody really, you know, resonates with our way of doing things and would like to join us with that experience. And there's the potential for them to be able to do that.
11-day detox or transformational detox retreat in Bali.
Okay.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
it's like a seamless narrative experience. So you leave your mind at home, just come with an open, heart, and everything will be taken care of for you.
Yeah, beautiful. I will put all those links in the post as well. So thank you so much for being on this interview and sharing your wisdom. And it was so, so amazing. I know that people will absolutely love this as well.